Hello, hello, and welcome to the last episode of the year of Found in Interpretation podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Alain Breton, and again for episode what? I put episode 15?
15. 15.
15.
Yes.
How you doing,
Uh,
Brian?
Not too bad, not too bad. I'm a little sad that it's our last episode but also very excited that it's going to be the beginning of season 2 next time we are together doing a podcast. So,
Are you
yeah,
saying that there's a few surprises down the road?
there might be a few surprises. Yes, I think so. I think that people should just stay tuned and like and subscribe to find out. Shameless plug right from the first 30 seconds of this podcast.
So we thought that for the review of 2024, we started this podcast back in September, but the idea emerged before that in 2024. And this week we thought that we could take a look at every episode that we shot, and we thought about commenting on some of the guests. We discussed all kinds of issues, and and there were also some questions that were sent to us by some interpreters. There are also some new interpreters who were asking questions. We may not be the most seasoned interpreters, but we have a bit of experience. So we thought that we could just go week by week and basically comment on some of the things we have heard or some of the thoughts that we may have had after shooting the episode. So, do you remember what we did in the first week, Brian?
I do. I think what we did was compare the difference between remote and on-site interpretation.
Yeah.
I think you had a couple of comments on this, didn't you?
Well, I was thinking the reason why remote interpretations suddenly appeared, it was because of COVID, the
Mm-hmm.
COVID-19 pandemic. And I was just thinking last night when I was preparing for the episode that this is these kinds of changes hopefully don't occur twice in a lifetime. I think that sometimes when we look at the history of interpretation, when we take a look at how IBM changed everything with its technology to create simultaneous interpretation, because before that it was only consecutive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in a way, I'm trying to see the positive thing in everything. And in a way, we were sort of lucky to live this period of transition, this period where not only there's simultaneous interpretation because of technology, but technology basically saved our jobs, saved our
Yeah.
lives, saved our income, and created new opportunities. And I was wondering if now, with the other technological changes that are coming, if the change that we're going through is sort of over, or if the change is ongoing. Because now that there is remote interpretation, we can think, okay, well, maybe it took 50, 60, 70 years for the previous period to settle. Are we going to have another period of, let's say, 50 years of this sort of hybrid mode like we're doing right now? Or because of the rapid growth of technology, are we going suddenly to see that maybe in 5 years or 10 years down the road, um, our work as interpreter will have to change again? So I was just thinking about those concepts.
Yeah, what I was thinking also was like just to define the remote interpretation. Like we're talking about like doing interpretation on our computers, on our laptops and stuff. And it brings me back. It brought me back to like 2000, the big economic crisis in 2008, where I was traveling a lot, and then all of a sudden there were no flights anymore because people were canceling their trips because the nobody had the stock market plummeted, so nobody had any money to be able to go and meet and stuff. So I think the origin of like the remote interpretation kind of started with like telephone conversations instead of in-person meetings for like the smaller gatherings. But I don't think the technology was there yet. And then if you fast forward to 2019 with COVID, now we have laptops and Zoom and WebEx and other technology that allowed us to be able to do our job still. So I don't know, maybe in 10, 12 years, maybe we'll all be holograms and we'll be meeting sort of in person, or as in person as like maybe Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
you
Or do
know?
you think we're gonna wear like those Apple Vision Pro big goggles where we're going to be on site virtually, or
We'll be in the metaverse.
oh,
The metaverse of interpretation. Yeah, my son, like I don't know, he's gravitating more and more from like doing the remote control video games to doing the goggles, the 3D goggles. So
he's got one of those. One of those.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And like but I've seen commercials on like people are watching Netflix on them, people are doing their exercise with them because there's exercise apps that you can do, and you can do like a whole bunch of different things, like a lot of 3D nature programs and stuff like that. So I'm wondering if maybe like one day we'll be plugged in that way.
Yeah. And but I think that it change technology is pretty cool, but at the same time, we see that I feel that interpreters are a bit more lonely than they were.
Mm-hmm.
People
Yeah.
are basically a lot at home,
Yeah.
and it's important. Before we move on to the next one, I thought that maybe it's important to reiterate that communication is key.
Mm-hmm.
And we have, although we don't travel on site as much as we used to, or personally as much as I'd like to, I think it's very important to create a good support network
Yes,
and
absolutely.
to have good people around you and keep talking to your colleagues. Not just, sometimes I find it a bit sad when I get to meet an interpreter for the first time in some assignment, you know, that that for an agency that I'm not so familiar with, and then I meet a new interpreter, but everything is so robotic, and we're just okay. Your turn, microphone. Okay, move on. Okay, goodbye. And
Mm-hmm.
I find, and I'm always trying. We're doing this podcast for a reason, right? We're people who like to talk to other people and to reach out.
Yeah.
And I find it a bit upsetting sometimes when I get to virtually meet other interpreters who don't try to reach out like this.
Yeah, and I think that's a good transition to episode number 2 that we did on the tips when everything fails, because the closer you are with your colleagues, the less likely you're going to run into like potential incidents where like nobody knows what to do. Like if you're in the habit of communicating with someone constantly because you're doing a podcast together, or like just because you're friends from work, then it's a lot easier for you to communicate back and forth. It's less robotic, like you said, and like say like your microphone stops working, you can tell your colleague real quick, okay, take over. You got a good chemistry going, and yeah, so that's a good lead into episode 2.
Yeah. So in episode two, we did have a message down in the comments line in the YouTube section,
Yep.
and Tamra Wooden asked, "What is the best communication method to communicate with the interpreters when they're working an event?"
Hmm.
And I would say it's WhatsApp, right?
I think that's the one that most people use. Yeah, I mean, there's Slack, there's Google Chat, there's Discord, but I think the one that most people are familiar with and is the easiest to use is WhatsApp. Yeah, and I think
Do
that's the one
you,
that we most.
but do you know why? I mean, I know
Uh,
it's easy, but why WhatsApp? I mean, there's Signal, I think there's
yeah, like yeah, Discord, Slack, like yeah, there's a whole bunch of different ones. But I think that one of the cool things about WhatsApp is that firstly, it's encrypted. So all of your messages are
is
encrypted.
it?
Yeah, yeah. It says at the beginning encryption to like from beginning to end or whatever. I don't know what the motto is.
Except for Mr. Zuckerberg.
Except for, yes, he's not allowed on YouTube or WhatsApp. Sorry. Well,
He
maybe
owns
probably
it.
not on.
He owns
Yeah.
it.
Well, he owns. Yes,
He
that's
owns it.
right.
Yeah. That's why I
Yeah.
said that.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too with WhatsApp is that you're working with colleagues all over the place, and WhatsApp is a free way to send messages to one another. It's like text messaging, but kind of on steroids in the sense that it's just as instant and it's free, and as long as you have a Wi-Fi connection, which we already do because we're already interpreting remotely, then WhatsApp is really user friendly and messages are quick. You can tell when someone has read your message or not. I think it's just it's the most instantaneous form, I think, right now for interpreters that I think that's why we prefer it. But I think more to Tamara's point was it because she owns or she is in an agency, an interpretation agency. So I think that maybe the question was more how does the agency communicate with interpreters, or how does the client communicate with interpreters?
Oh, okay, because you have your own agency, so you think from that point of view. I thought of the point of view of the interpreter.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking like how does the like if all else fails and the client's like, "Oh, we can't hear you." Like how do they get in touch with you?
Well, I personally, what I do at some events when I have the opportunity to speak to tech support. If it's a good, well organized event, there's going to be someone responsible
Mhm.
for tech support, and I just basically give them my phone number.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
personally, I don't mind doing that. I have a business phone number, which is what I give
Yeah.
in order to make sure everything runs smoothly. And every once in a while, once every 6 months or once a year or something, there's something, everything fails. Someone may have an outage, or the internet fails for some reason. Then we just make sure that we can easily be reachable, because there's nothing worse than being in an event where you don't know where the other interpreter is. You don't know what's going on. There's all kinds of emergency, or you try to text someone and someone doesn't answer. And I think that to all the new interpreters out there, you have to make sure you're easily reachable. And yeah, so
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And also I think that with Zoom and WebEx, you can do direct messages to the host, which is usually the person who is in charge of the
yeah, but you don't
meeting
always have
online.
permission. In
No,
the chat,
so
in the chat, and that's the problem with the Zoom chat bot,
yeah.
because you don't always have permission. Sometimes everyone can read it.
Hmm.
Sometimes everyone writes. Then you sort of
It gets
lose the
lost. Yeah.
flow. It gets
Yeah.
lost.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think that yeah, like a lot of times like having just a common WhatsApp room is pretty good. And once you leave the room, then your information's safe. Like you it kind of falls off the map of all of your texting and whatnot. Once the event's done, you can just leave the chat room and you're move on to the next one. Um, I think the other thing too with the communication thing is that to have just one interpreter communicate with the client. Because I've had an event where there was I think 24 interpreters, and then some that the meeting was running late, like the main plenary. So all of the interpreters who were in the workshops were like, "Where is everybody? We haven't done a test. We haven't done anything. Where is everyone?" And so like if everybody is texting the client like, "What's going on?" Like then
basically having a virtual chef d'équipe.
yeah, exactly. So like instead of having 24 emails sent to one client, just have one email, like just and then that person can relay the message as to what's happening. Like they're running late, like just wait, be patient.
And when this happens, do you appoint someone as
uh,
someone who's a bit more responsible for making sure that everything runs smoothly?
Usually, and for the larger events, if it's French or Spanish, I'll put myself on one of the teams so that I could be the contact person. So that's kind of one of the advantages of being an agency owner and an interpreter is that I can also be part of the team.
Yeah, well, you can. It reminds me sometimes um, when you're dealing with agencies that don't always have a contact person who is an interpreter, or who at least experience interpretation.
Hmm.
I don't like then that's when you get the funny requests.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then that's when they'll say, well, we have a male and a female speaker. We want the male speaker, the male interpreter to do the male speaker, and the female interpreter to do the female speaker. And then you're like, yeah, but what if the male speaker speaks 90% of the time?
Yeah,
Or
Or
the
same with
opposite,
like
right?
or like English and French. Like I want one of you to do English and the other one to do French.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And I'm like, it's not dubbing, it's
no,
interpretation.
yes, absolutely,
But
yeah.
only someone who has experience and who's an interpreter, him or herself, will be able to understand and actually make sure, because the request doesn't come from the agency. The request comes from the client, and the agency starts trying to please the client. And I know it's hard to say no.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but we have standards that we have to keep.
Yeah. Well,
But speaking of which, too, that does have a mental load on you when you have to juggle all those extra things, which
it's
leads to episode
stressful.
3.
Yeah.
So
You're good with
episode
the
3,
segue. See, I
I'm
would
awesome.
just I don't know what time it is. I
We're
could
just
spend
winging
an
it.
hour. We're gonna do a 15-hour podcast where we'll go for about an hour on each episode. So
This is
sorry, you're
our
very good with the
5-hour
hygiene.
long year in review. It was a long year.
It was a good year.
Imagine next year when we do one per week, we're gonna have like 52 episodes to have to do a year in review on. Like
Well,
we'll be
we're
here
gonna
for
group
days.
them. We're gonna group them by themes and
Yeah, and have a lot of Red Bull before.
yeah. Well, I'm having some Japanese tea here.
Awesome.
So go ahead. Okay, I'll leave you with episode 3. Go ahead.
So episode 3, we explored how the interpreter's brain works, and there was a question about the Nuremberg trials and the Japanese trials. We weren't too sure what happened in Japan, and we concentrated a lot of like the birth of interpretation on Nuremberg. But it's important to go back to that question because I did do a little bit of research
Oh.
on what happened during the Japanese trials, and the reason why I think it's not documented as much in terms of simultaneous interpretation is because even though that they did have um, IBM provide the interface to be able to do interpretation, it was consecutive actually. So they used the system to
Oh.
do it consecutively as opposed to simultaneously. So I think that's why during the Nuremberg trials, when they were doing it simultaneously, that's really where the birthplace was. Whereas in Tokyo, yes, that was the first time that they used simultaneous interpretation equipment, but not simultaneous interpretation in Japan.
Well, they kept to their traditions.
Yeah. And
How
then
surprising.
yeah, and the other thing I thought that was interesting with the human brain is Ahmed had a post on LinkedIn. We'll get to Ahmed's podcast in a bit, but before that, he actually wrote that interpreters devote about 20% of their brain capacity to listening to the speaker, 20% to processing the message, so understanding, 20% to find the right lexical and contextual equivalent, 20% for translating the message, and 20% to listening to the rest of the speech. So I thought that was really, really interesting when we're talking about how the human brain works. Because, say, like, you're having trouble listening to the speaker, then your 20% is actually going to go up, and you're going to have to sacrifice some of the other parts of the 100% of the brain that it takes to process a message. So that's why, like, when we do tests and stuff before conferences, it's so important to devote the necessary time to make sure that you can properly listen to each speaker. And not only that, like, maybe there's an accent, so you have to concentrate a bit more on that. So yeah, I thought that his way to capture the human brain in a percentage basis, I thought was really interesting.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you. When I first started interpreting, I recorded myself, of course, and I noticed that when I spoke English, um, or even my French, was not as polished
Hmm.
as it would be if I was not interpreting. And I thought, like for instance, I'm a native French speaker, and when I heard myself speaking English, I thought, why do I suddenly have this much thicker Quebecois accent when I spoke English? And I thought, why is it happening? And then when I was at Glendon, I spoke to my program director, and it's a bit like what Ahmed said, but he compared it with a car
Mm.
that is heavily loaded, quite heavy. and one of the tires, the weakest one, will blow up first. And in my case, and I think that he also said in most people, it would be the accent, the pronunciation part, because your mind is so busy trying to figure out everything else at the same time that when you don't have as much experience, one of them is going to fail first.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that you're doing bad work or anything, but it's just that some things will come. Your weakest point will come out more.
Yeah. I thought it was really interesting. Yeah, and I think you're right, because like if we're starting to focus on other stuff, like in our own heads, like it's not that it's not that we're doing a bad job. It's that we're not devoting that 20% on something else that is part of the message, right? So like, I think that's kind of where he was coming up with like the whole lexical component, because if you have like the more words you have in your vocabulary, the easier they come to you, and the easier it is for you to make the message flow into the other language, right? So yeah, that was like there's a huge component of that. But I'd say like also to his point is that I don't necessarily think that we're spending 100% of our brain capacity on interpretation, because we are also
we need to breathe.
Yeah, we need to think about breathing. Sure, I mean we're multitasking, that's for sure, but we're checking messages to make sure that we're being listened to. Like we're checking that if we're recording ourselves, that the recording's working.
Changing the channel.
We're changing channels. We're communicating with our colleagues. We're doing a bunch of other things in the background too. So it's like I don't think we're doing 100% in interpretation. I don't think that that's possible to devote 100% of your mind to that, but it is a huge percentage. But we also have to allocate a little bit to all those other little things that are happening throughout the event.
Well, I think that it's also it depends on the event as well. If you're familiar with the topic, or if if it's something a bit more complicated, or if you're not in your usual setup, it will change as well. Or if you're on site remote.
If we get scripts beforehand.
Oh, or
that's a game changer.
Yeah. Or sometimes they'll give you the script, but they won't even follow the script.
Yeah.
So.
Well, hopefully Louis Jolicoeur has some tips about that for the
micro
program at Université of Laval.
You're the master of translation.
Because that was episode 4, was Université de Laval with Louis Jolicoeur, and he was explaining to us how promising this new program is going
to be. For those of you who have not listened to episode 4, this was the first episode where we had a guest. Yeah. The episode was in French with Louis Jolicoeur. I even had a comment for someone saying, "Hey, can you do an interpretation of the podcast, because we don't speak French." So to sum it up, Louis Jolicoeur, my former program director when I was at Laval University back in the early 2000s, launched with the help of the Translation Bureau a micro program for interpreters at Laval University here in Quebec City. And the reason why the Translation Bureau decided to invest some resources into helping launching this program is because there's a shortage of interpreters, especially on Parliament Hill in Ottawa. In the corporate market where you and I work most of the time, I think that I'm not sure if there's a big shortage of interpreters, just like on Parliament Hill. But right now, from what I've heard during the press conference at Laval University back in September, if I recall, they basically what they were explaining is that a lot of interpreters who are working full-time at the Parliament are retiring soon, or they have a lot of needs for the parliamentary committees, the House of Commons, the Senate, and there are a lot of things that are happening right now in the Parliament in Canada. And we in Canada, we're a bilingual country. Everything needs to be in both languages, French and English. So if there are no interpreters in the room, you can't go on. they have to find interpreters.
I know. I was
So
so surprised to hear that there weren't enough, and that everything's at a standstill if there aren't enough interpreters.
yeah. So they came up with a quick program. I would say quick because it's basically 2 semesters plus an internship program. I think with the and I don't have all the details, but if I recall correctly, the internship is with the Translation Bureau. And then this started a whole debate. I was following some of the chat groups for interpreters, and some people were happy to see that there's a program, a good solid program that is launching in Quebec, although it's quite small. This is the beginning, I'm sure, of something new. And some other interpreters kind of brushed it off and said, well, why do we need this? And then when I spoke to certain people, and then certain people after the podcast reached out to me, and what I was telling them, and to the more doubtful people into the program, well, I said, first of all, if the program's not for everyone, you don't, if you don't feel that you don't want to do the program, you don't have to do it. But some people I felt a bit threatened by it
Hmm.
in a way.
Interesting. Yeah.
Maybe because I don't know if it was a reason for qualifications, or some people were saying, well, we became interpreters without a program, so why would we need to do this? But I think that all the certifications that you can get, either you can do a master's program, or maybe like the micro program from Louis, or any other certifications you can get. I think that this is very important for your career. I think
Hmm.
that this gives you more credibility. I think that it gives you more trust towards your client. For instance, I'm a member of ATIAC,
Hmm.
and soon you as well, Brian. Yes, I'm sure.
Applications in.
Yes, okay. It's been sent. Okay, that's for 2025.
Yeah.
So, but do why trying to get certain certifications like this? Well, I think it's important because it gives more trust. It gives you more confidence in yourself. It establishes a relationship with the client, which you can justify your rates to your client and say, "Well, this is a profession, and
Hmm.
just like lawyers charge a lot, and accountants do, and all these other certified professions, well, interpreters are part of that same batch."
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think I mean, I'm a big proponent of professional development. I think that if this is something that you feel you need, then why not do it? Or it doesn't even have to be an interpretation. If you want to take a language course just to perfect your language skills, do that. Or if you want to have better people skills because you tend to not get along with everybody, and like we're interpreters, we're very client facing. So like yeah, work on your people skills. I don't see anything that's going to be threatening our profession in terms of professional development. I think it's going to improve things for us in the short and in the long term.
But one thing that really surprised me when I heard at the press conference, I think Louis' objective was to train 10 to 15. I think he went as high as
Yeah, I think
15.
yeah, that's what he said. Yeah.
Yeah, and I met some people who are enrolling into the program, because the program will be launching in September. I think in September
Hmm.
2025. And I've had some candidates reaching out just to talk and to ask me about the profession, and people who are actually watching this podcast as well. That's why we're becoming increasingly popular.
Yes.
And yeah, I really wish Louis good luck with his program. I know that
Absolutely. Yeah.
he's been dreaming about this program for a very long time, and I don't think that it's threatening Glendon or Ottawa or any other program out there. I think more variety, more competition is just good for everyone.
Yep. I think he
And
was very candid. Like it was a breath of fresh air because he said like at the beginning of the program when it starts, He'll say, if you're not into current events, if you're not into this, if you're not into these things, these are the things that are the backbone of being a good interpreter, being informed of all these things. If this is not the kind of thing for you, then this isn't the kind of program for you. So I thought it was really honest of him to do that, understanding that even though he's going to get 15 people that are going to enroll, that maybe it's not everyone's cup of tea. Some people might drop off, some people might fail, some people might move on to something else, and some people will graduate but decide that interpretation is not for them. So really, like I think instead of thinking, oh, we're going to have 15 new competitors on the market, it's going to be I think, and if you're going to be realistic, not all of them are going to pass, and the ones that do, well, welcome to the market, because there's a lot of work for everybody.
Still, so you think that the work is not only on Parliament Hill or in Ottawa, but
Oh, it's
also in the market
everywhere,
in
yeah.
general?
Oh yeah, like I mean, UN Language Services has conferences all throughout North America. So yeah, if don't
Are you struggling sometimes to find interpreters?
sometimes, yeah, it does happen. There's like hell weeks is what we call them. It's like there's like a week where everybody decides to meet at the same on the same date, and I'm like, oh my God,
I've
like our
noticed that the worst days are Wednesdays.
yeah, Wednesdays
Like
are
I
packed.
get
Yeah,
10 offers for a Wednesday for like a Wednesday, September 26th or something. And then it seems that everything happens on September 26th.
yeah, and I mean, like, even for 2025 on February 5th. If there's one more conference in Toronto, I don't have any interpreters left because they're all taken. So, so if any of our clients are listening, book your meeting on any date other than
Well,
February 5th outside of Toronto.
are you asking me to visit?
Yes, come visit on February 5th. I got work for you. Oh my God.
But it must be concentrated throughout do you, there's a pool of interpreters. Where are they? Do you find more interpreters in Ottawa, in Montreal, Toronto?
Montreal is the I'd say the mecca of being able to find the most interpreters. I
What about
think
the
like
most work?
the most work, probably Ottawa, I'd say. Yeah. I mean, like you said, like everything that has to do with the federal government has to be in both official languages. So, and I've heard that there's a lot of times where it's a silent booth too, where like the interpretation services are there, but nobody uses them. So it's kind of a waste of resources in a way. But I mean, that means that other places that do need it will have to hire interpreters. So it gets very busy very quickly.
Yeah, well, then let me not get started on that silent booth thing.
Yeah.
That's a whole different ball game.
Yes, absolutely. One person who wasn't silent was Stephen.
I knew it, I knew it, I knew it. As soon as
We have to move on.
I know. What time is it now?
So we taught this. Stephen Godet taught us about interpreting politicians in the news, which I thought was fascinating. And I think the biggest thing with him was not to get starstruck. I think that was one of the things that came out of his message was basically that you interpret for people who are kind of celebrities in their own right, like as politicians. So
Mhm.
it's important not to get so bogged down on that, and to concentrate on the message and try to make the politicians who don't sound as coherent more coherent.
Yeah, politicians don't follow a class on speech making, right?
Or public speaking, yeah. I mean, some are naturally gifted, right? Like I mean, even
I think
before
you were talking about Bill Clinton once, right?
yeah, I mean, even like before Trudeau was in politics, he did speeches for the Trudeau Foundation, and I thought he was quite eloquent when I interpreted for him. And I was like, this guy's going to be in politics one day. And sure enough, he's our
Hold on a
prime
second.
minister.
You're saying that he was eloquent before he got into politics, or you're saying that now?
I
Okay,
don't.
Switzerland. It's
Yes,
Switzerland. We can't say anything.
I have no comments on how he enunciates or speaks both languages.
You
But
know,
yeah,
I to
you're
make
talking about Bill Clinton. Yeah,
yeah.
like when he walks into a room, he's a presence, man. Like everyone, the tone of the room changes. Like everyone's like, ooh, like
You know,
maybe
I
not so much now because he's a little bit
yeah,
like
he's older now, and
older. He looks a little
yeah.
sickly. So yeah.
You know, I remember just before, I think that Trudeau was starting in politics, and he made, I think you can still find it on YouTube somewhere. he made a speech where he was going from English to French and French to English, like he was changing almost basically every sentence.
Oh, that's the
And
interpreter's
he's very
nightmare.
theatrical. And when I saw that at first, I was like, is that a parody? I thought it was a parody. And then I was like, oh, he's serious. I was like, I thought it was meant as a joke, or maybe he was just fooling around with journalists, and maybe he was wondering if they were going to take him seriously. But it was one of those ways he found to try to distinguish himself. It was before he became the leader of the Liberal Party.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I thought, oh my God, I was like, what a nightmare for the interpreters.
Oh, absolutely. Going from one language to the next.
But I have
I
have one question. Now there's the opposition party with
Mm-hmm.
Pierre Poilievre.
Yeah.
And he's very punchy, and he comes with in English, because English is his native language, although
Mm-hmm.
his name sounds French. Actually, he's Anglophone. And his French is getting increasingly better, but
Mm-hmm.
he comes with these punchy lines like "axe the tax,"
Mm.
and
Yeah.
I have to check how interpreters in Ottawa translate that.
Yeah.
Like, how do they say, like let's say, "Let's bring it home."
Yeah.
So it like in French, you don't like on va you're not going to say, on va couper la taxe, or on va abolir la taxe, but it doesn't have the
punch of using
punch.
an axe.
Yeah, it's like axe attack. So I would say
Tronçonner des impôts.
Afuera!
Bring out your chainsaws.
Yeah. Oh, hold on a second. You're making a parallel here. Millet has a chainsaw. Are you saying that Poilievre will have in 2025 an axe?
Maybe that's what he'll use to this.
He'll be wearing a square shirt, the red, and the toque.
That's
and
right.
The axe, like a lumberjack from back in the day.
He'll have to learn how to say bûcheron pretty quick in French.
All right. So, but just a quick shout out at Stephen. Congratulations to Stephen that we can hear every once in a while. Sometimes I'm watching the news and then I suddenly hear Stephen on the TV, and I'm always like, I know this guy.
Yeah, no, he's definitely a celebrity amongst our circle. At least.
Yes, amongst our circles.
And so the next one is I don't have a smooth transition for the next one because we're actually moving from interpretation and going into translation.
Oh no, I can make a smooth. You know what?
Oh, go for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Joachim was, okay, let me put it this way. Stephen has been able to get famous among interpreters because of what he's doing at Radio-Canada. But every other interpreter who doesn't have this platform needs to do marketing. And
yes.
Joachim came to talk to us about marketing.
He did, yes. Marketing it's very good. That was awesome.
It was wordy. It was long.
No, it was.
I can do better next time.
Very succinct. You could make a short out of this on YouTube. But yeah, Joachim came with some really insightful information about the world of translation, but I mean the world of language in general. I thought he was very, very good at explaining how you can leverage your skills despite all the new technologies that are coming, or thanks to all the technologies that are coming. I thought he was really good.
I met him at the OTIAC conference in Montreal in October, November. I'm losing track.
I know.
I don't know if every other interpreter feels that way, but I feel that September, October, November, and slightly December is like one big month.
Yeah,
we were so busy.
Mm-hmm.
And Joachim was. His speech back at the OTIAC was a bit more focused on translators rather than interpreters, but I think that there are a lot of parallels between both professions.
Mm-hmm.
Both professions are going through big technological change, as we said. And one of the points that I really liked about him is said, well, when it comes to productivity, should and it was a case for translators. He was saying, should translators reduce their rates per word? But the fact that you're faster than you used to be also means that you can hand in it earlier than you would have if you didn't have those tools. So
Yeah,
in a way, what's the justification to lower the rates? And
exactly.
I
Because a lot of a lot of people who request translations are like, I need this by yesterday. Like it's usually an urgent request, as opposed to interpretation, where it's like, oh, can you do an interpretation next month? Like,
well, sometimes you do get these requests. Hey, the meeting is about to start, and the other interpreter has a problem. We need someone right now.
yes, yes. Well, but I mean, what I'm saying is like the conferences and meetings are a little bit more scheduled, but when translations are needed, it's like as soon as the English is published, the French should be published immediately as well. So no matter how many words, no matter how much like context you need, like I feel like they're under a lot more pressure than we are.
Oh, on that point, absolutely.
Yeah,
When it
yeah,
comes to, let's say, Supreme Court decisions
mm-hmm,
that have to be published in both languages,
yeah,
or press releases, or when it comes to government, I'm sure that we should get a translator from the Translation Bureau. I
yeah.
have someone in mind, but I'm not sure if she'll
I'm thinking
want
of
to
someone
come.
as well. 2025, here we
Yeah,
come.
yeah, we have a list of guests. Episode 7 with Ahmed.
Yeah. So I think to sum it up, I think Louis Casgrain commented on YouTube for this episode. He just said, "Wow, Ahmed is really an incredible person." So
Yeah.
I thought he was great, and but I wish I had heard a little bit more about his colleagues and how they cope with like doing constant work on war crimes and genocide and stuff like that. Because he seemed to be able to have that separation between I'm not them, this is not my life. I can go home at the end of the day and I'm okay. But I wonder if that's how his colleagues also feel.
Well, he did mention that there are some there's mental health support,
Yes, I think he mentioned that it started recently too. It wasn't always instituted.
but I
Um,
think that mental health is an issue that now we talk about, but we weren't
yeah, true
before.
enough. True enough.
And that's in every field.
Yeah, yeah. What a toll, though. What a responsibility.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And at the same time, you get to see another side of humanity
Hmm.
that you wouldn't.
Yeah,
Especially when you get to go on site and the most interesting part for me from what he was saying was that they had to go on site to try to find some people who would speak um, a language that is not an official language at the tribunal, or that they would have to basically train on the spot someone to become an interpreter.
and inconspicuously, like secretively, because if anyone
Right.
caught wind that they were trying to do that, then like the person who they're going after would probably catch wind and be like, "Oh, well, either we'll take the appropriate measures to make sure this doesn't happen."
Yeah, it was that's probably I think that for a lot of people it was their favorite episode.
Yeah, yeah. It was so interesting. I loved it. Yeah.
So
And then but I think it was interesting too that when he talked about AI, because we do touch about it on
transition
it
again.
a little bit on in each episode, and I thought he was like very cool about like, yeah, I don't think like the tone, the inflection, the feeling, the emotion, like all this stuff, like I don't know if it would carry in the profession. So he had very high hopes about the profession, and I think that yeah, it does transition well with the next episode, because Olivier was talking about his new AI program for interpretation called Canoe.
Yes, on episode 8, Olivier Lepage,
Hmm.
who is the president of America Interpretation, came to introduce his AI platform, which, to be honest with you, it's more like a work in progress still. I don't, I it didn't. I don't think we talked as much as I would have liked to about where he's into the process. I watched the episode after its release, and that episode generated a lot of comments also online. And I would have liked to focus also a bit more on where he's at in the process when he's officially launching, because from what I've heard, and it was a bit fuzzy, but I don't think it was something you can just buy or click or get online right now, right?
Hmm.
There's no app on your phone yet, or there's no software you can download, or
Well, from what I understand, it was kind of like a request from the government about medical services, right? To be able
well,
to
it's
have that there in that setting, and then also like maybe do the transition into more corporate stuff.
yeah, but the that's the request. He didn't try this as to trying to find a solution to a problem from a client.
Hmm.
I think that he came up with his own way of having an AI translate. And then one of the government branches in Quebec Healthcare Ministry reached out to the hub,
Yeah,
the
the think
startup
tank.
hub,
Yeah,
and it was called Center, or the name.
we'll have to go back to
Yeah,
our
we
own
have to go back. We should watch the episode again. And then he's trying to basically make his software work to provide a solution in those medical situations.
Hmm.
But it wasn't clear, because he also talked about the fact that he did try his software at a conference for sex and robots or something like that.
Yeah,
And so that's why I was a bit confused at first. I was like, well, is it more consecutive? Is it simultaneous? Is it for conferences? Is it to help government services? Is it to replace interpreters? Is it to make is it to provide services where there are no interpreters available, or it would be very difficult? Uh, I would love to have him back
yeah.
in.
I think one thing that we could probably promise our viewers is that, yeah, well, we're going to keep a close eye on how things go and keep in touch with Olivier and maybe bring him on. And if Riverside, like the podcast platform that we use, can facilitate a demo, maybe we can do this as we do the podcast, like have kind of a interpreter podcast.
Wow, that is a challenge, Olivier. If you're watching,
Yeah.
get ready. But it's not there are other AI platforms out there, I think, that you know of, right?
Yeah, and I think it's good that Canada is coming up with a solution to the AI in interpretation because, yeah, the other ones are American, or I don't know if there's any in Europe that are out on the market as heavily as the one that I hear of constantly is Wordly, and they're based out
Is
of
that
California.
California? Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, that if they're going to be competing against Wordly, I think that it's good for a Canadian market because we should probably use Canadian products and Canadian talent to be able to provide those services instead of relying on someone from a foreign country or a foreign agency. Yeah.
But you've sent me a LinkedIn post regarding AI and interpretation, right?
Yeah. And I think that that leads into our next episode where we're talking about navigating bias and AI and how AI would be able to do that. And yeah,
What's the post, and what did it say? And
uh,
I think it was about Kudo.
oh, Kudo. Geez, I don't remember. I
Okay,
sent
well,
you one.
from what I remember, I thought you would remember it more because you sent it to me.
Oh, I
But
know. I send you lots of stuff through.
yeah, we do, huh?
We do communicate a lot.
Yeah, we do a lot of research for this podcast. We spend hours and hours. I don't even know how I'll have time to do interpretation in 2025 now. But long story short, I think that the basically the post was that Kudo uh, announced that human interpreters are much more reliable than AI interpreters, and that they are not pursuing AI interpretation in 2025 as much. And
Hmm.
basically, they're going to come back to human interpreters. I
Yeah.
think it was something like that, right?
Yeah. Now that you just mentioned it, I think that's what the article said. I thought it was the one that I sent you of the soccer referee, where they were trying to use AI for the cameras to be able to follow the ball, but
No,
the referee was bald, so they followed the referee's head instead of the
no
ball.
way.
Yeah, I sent you that link.
You sent me that?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I got to go back. I'll double
It had
check that.
nothing to do with
Yeah,
interpretation,
yeah.
but I
Oh,
thought
maybe. Okay, that's why.
maybe that's why. But I thought, well, geez, like the AIs, we've got some work to do here if they're following the referee's bald head instead of the actual soccer ball. But yeah, no, when we were, I think, yeah, episode 9, we were talking about that and how AI, like, would it be able to recognize bias? And we're not 100% sure as to where it is now. I think AI is still in its infancy. One cool thing about that episode, though, was that Zapato's Vibes posted on YouTube that he was our 100th subscriber. So he thought it was really cool. And thank you for the reference, because I think you referred him to the podcast, and that's how he became
Actually, there was I had lunch with several interpreters here in Quebec City,
yeah,
and he was there, and I said, "Oh yeah, well, I'm always trying to plug the podcast," and they're like, "Oh yeah, have you seen the podcast?" No, and then
he
he
became our
became
100th
the
subscriber. Yeah,
yeah. But now we have much more than we have more than 100.
yes. And partly because Louis Casgrain came on, and a lot of people were interested about his long career as an interpreter, which is episode 10.
Are you rushing things right now?
We're never going to end this podcast.
So Louis came onto our podcast, and
Yes.
Louis, personally, I love Louis.
Mhm.
He's
It's
one.
quite the character.
Well, he helped me out in my early career.
Hmm.
He's the first one who actually gave me a chance when I was much younger, and I was in my 20s, and I was nervous. I was unsure, and I had all kinds of questions. The world of interpretation seems so mysterious, and everything the watching interpreters perform seemed like magic. But Louis is actually the one that really pushed me ahead, and he's one of the reasons. Also, I'm an interpreter. I have to thank Louis Jolicoeur, of course, who first introduced me to
Hmm.
Louis Casgrain here in Quebec City. But I really, I really appreciate what Louis has done for my career, and I think that a lot of people can say that here, at least here in the Quebec City market.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever
He's
people may think sometimes outside of the Quebec, I know that for some people outside of Quebec, he may, some people may not know him as well. But once you get to know him, he's an incredible guy, and it's just a pleasure. He's just a pleasure to work with.
yeah. And I know that when I started, like in 2003, 2004, the market was very aggressive. That there was not very much room for new people. But I think Louis is the kind of guy who gives people a chance and like doesn't look at that kind of thing. He's just like just a nice dude. Like maybe you can end this podcast with the song Louis Louis, since
What's
both
that?
Louis. Yeah, that song Louis Louis do 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 do
Oh,
do do. That's how we're
we'll
gonna
get
end
the
this
copy.
podcast.
Be careful. We're gonna get. We're not even monetizing, but
We're gonna
we're
get
gonna
sued
get
for zero
YouTube's gonna
dollars.
block everything, and
We're coming for you, found an interpretation. So I have no transition for the Glendon program, which was episode 11.
um,
Except that we did it did cause quite a lot of chat amongst the interpretation
well,
chat rooms, I think.
that was a very, very, very big hot topic, and
Hmm. And thanks
basically,
again for Kathleen
well,
too for coming on.
I
Yeah.
reached out to Kathleen
Hmm.
last night.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah, because in preparation for this episode, of course.
Of course, yes.
And she told me that Ahmed and Andy Gillis are heading to Toronto, and that basically the GoFundMe is able, and also there's another professor or instructor his name is Hassan. I don't know him,
Oh, would
but
he be the one for the Arabic interpreters, maybe?
probably okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And so basically, Hassan also, and the GoFundMe has been able to provide maybe plane tickets or accommodations for the instructors,
Hmm.
and we'll see about Helen Campbell later on in the year. But the GoFundMe, she thanked me for the podcast, because the podcast basically gave a push to the GoFundMe campaign. And I don't know if Brian, you can take a look on your side, on your computer, where they're at in the GoFundMe campaign.
Hmm.
But the last time I checked, they were close to the $10,000. I think that they were a few $100 short. I think it was 9,400 last time I checked.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Close to 10 grand, eh? Jeez.
Yeah, so I would like to congratulate the community for stepping up and really helping out. It means that this program is important. It means that it's important to a lot of people, and that it's important to have a master's program in interpretation at Glendon.
Well,
And
let's do one more plug because they're at 90% of their goal. They're at $9,475,
oh, okay.
and their goal is $10,500.
So
So,
they're a little bit less than $600.
yeah. So if York University is there, if you guys want to match the GoFundMe, that's up to you. Or if if anyone else wants to donate, we can also include the link at the bottom of this episode as well. But if you're looking for it right now, if you go to episode 11 and the YouTube comments, we've included it there as well. So that's how I found it just now. So it's very easy.
Yeah. But I'm glad our podcast has an impact, at least to help out people. It's not just listening to you and I talk all the time. It also has an impact, and I think that unknowingly, that's one of the reasons now I like to do this podcast,
Hmm.
because people, if you don't, it's important to reach out,
Yes.
whatever the way.
Yes. And like educate people and all the other reasons why we do this. And yeah. And
So
like you
good luck.
said, for free.
Yeah.
So don't come after us, YouTube, if we start using people's songs and
We're
stuff.
not planning on starting a Patreon or anything like that. Um, but I just want to say once again that it's very important to keep the program alive.
Hmm.
Whatever shape that will take in 2025, I don't know. I don't. I hope it doesn't mean that the program will be canceled. I don't think so, but I think that they're still enrolling students for next fall. But whatever the future holds, I hope the program, stays again for many, many more years to come. So good luck
Absolutely.
to everyone involved with the program, and hopefully this storm will pass, and things will settle one way or another.
I think you're way more optimistic than my daughter, who I hear crying downstairs. I don't think it's going through the microphone or not, but yep, she's having a meltdown.
I can hear something
Yeah,
in the
there's
back.
something back there. So, but wasn't Mercedes Amoretti one of the graduates from Glendon College?
No, no, she did attend the first year.
Okay,
I have to reread the bio.
yeah.
Um,
I wonder because speaking of which, she was our next guest
yeah, I
speaker
know.
at the
Episode
following
12,
episode.
yes.
Yeah. She did have do a lot of interpretation, like education and interpretation. I thought that um, her parcours, her journey through interpretation was extraordinary. Just to be involved in the nuclear industry in Spain for so many years,
And starting in the nuclear industry.
yeah, yeah,
What an opportunity.
absolutely,
I
yeah.
lived in Spain. I missed that.
I
I
know.
wish.
Yeah, you're in Barcelona, no?
That was in Barcelona. Yeah, I was not in Madrid, but
No.
I don't know. My life would have been completely different if I had found some work in Spain back in the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it sounds like it was like a cool team to work with too, because like they weren't in Madrid proper. They were just outside, like 35 miles or so, and then so they had to actually stay there, from what I understand. Like not very many people actually did the commute back and forth. So that's one way to build a camaraderie, like in
Yeah.
comparison to now, like where we see each other on a computer screen, like that was something.
So yeah, and I thought that she brought a lot of energy into the
Oh yeah.
episode. She talked a lot, brought a lot of energy, and basically, I work a lot with Mercedes.
Hmm.
Um, we seem to find each other, although we don't coordinate anything. We work a lot together, and it's one of my booth mates that I really appreciate working with.
Yeah, I enjoy like when you guys are working together too. Like when I assign you guys to events, because like you guys bring a lot of energy into the booth, right? Like it's not like
Yeah,
someone who'd like. I mean, not that you don't want to be there, but there's a lot of people who are like don't have the same um like passion, I guess. I would say like some people are very monotone in the way that they convey a message. It's proper interpretation. It works out well, but like you guys actually have the inflection, the tone, the energy, like and you can keep it going throughout the whole day. So yeah, every time I assign you guys to an event, I'm like, oh, they're gonna do great. I don't have to worry about it.
well, I have Mercedes and I work also for politicians, and we do legislative assembly debates, and whenever politicians go and Mr. Speaker, the health minister promised they would hire more nurses, so you can't have a monotone voice, or you have to show a bit of energy
Absolutely, yeah.
when you want to convey such message. So I think that over the years, this may have actually trickled into other performances that we can do.
Cool.
But it's all about the speaker. If you have a good speaker with lots of energy, then it also makes our life easier as well.
Yeah, and I think that was a big thing for our podcast too. All of our guests have been high energy and very passionate about the industry.
Yeah.
And just to transition again, Corinne was one of them. She was
Yes.
our
Yes.
episode 13.
Yes.
Yeah, and she was talking to us about the American scene for interpretation.
I'm very curious about that.
Yeah, me too. I want to meet her in Boston at the next ATA meeting in November.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I
And
think Found an Interpretation should do a little field trip.
well, do you think that if Canada becomes the 51st state, then do you think that maybe it's going to mean even more work for interpreters or less work for interpreters?
And less
If
hassle at the border.
well, yeah, that's for sure.
But would we be the 51st or 52nd? Because I'm pretty sure you wanted Mexico to be the one of the states too. So,
Well, I think that
right.
Quebec will try to be its own state or something. Say, no, we want to be the 53rd state or something.
Yeah, so we're gonna end up. Yeah, careful what you wish for in your presidential endeavors to this next president of the United States.
2025 looks like it's going to be a very, very special year.
Hmm.
Not only for us as interpreters, but there are a lot of things going on in the world right now. And uh, what are your thoughts about 2025? Because I did ask Mercedes and Corrine about it.
Yeah, they
Uh,
were all very optimistic. Actually, everyone who was on our show was really optimistic about the future,
but what about your general?
and
What about the general feeling out there?
I am as well. Yeah. I think this year will be like more about like harnessing the technology even more to be able to promote our profession even more. Because a lot of people still don't know what we do. Well, I go to a lot of like parties and stuff, and I'm an interpreter, and I have to explain what that is, and I have to explain how it works, and a lot of people still don't know about it. So I think there's a lot of opportunities still out there for people, especially like a lot of people think, oh, like that's just like the United Nations or like the higher up stuff, but like no, any company with a national scope or even a interprovincial scope like Ontario, Quebec, or Maritimes, Quebec, like everything has to be in both official languages. So we're kind of spoiled in a way in Canada that we have the two official languages, and um, actually coming back to Korean, I was very surprised to hear that the United States doesn't have an official language. I
I was surprised as well because English is not the official language.
Yeah. So, anyways, yeah. But aside from that, the 14th episode that we have was about our top 10. It was input from the interpreters about funny things or bizarre things that happened to them throughout 2024.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think we're going to get a whole bunch of other stories for 2025
Oh,
because I
there's a
don't.
lot. Yeah,
We
I mean, this year we're starting in January rather than September, so we'll have even more stories to tell.
Absolutely. So yeah, so no, I think the future is very promising um, for our profession, and I think for the podcast too.
I'm delighted to do this podcast. To be
Yeah,
honest with you,
likewise.
this is one of the highlights of the year. It's because it became a lot more. Being an interpreter became a lot more than just performing on the microphone. Um, Over time, I can say, and maybe I'll conclude with this thought.
Hmm.
Over time, I feel that after repeating everybody else's words, I have a hard time figuring out my own, and and this podcast, in a way, helps me shape my own thoughts
Hmm.
because people don't realize, and if non-interpreters are also listening to this podcast, people don't realize that interpreters we spend our whole days speaking for being somebody else's voice. We're going through other people's experience, thoughts, and ways of thinking. It's great because you get to see how other people see the world.
Hmm.
But then when it comes to making your own thoughts, you have to take some time and breathe and think about your own words and thoughts
Absolutely.
because it's like it's like I would say water and water infiltrating and coming leaking slowly into the roof of the house. And at some point, you got to clean things up because if you don't do that, then you're going to lose your own thoughts as well. So I think that and maybe everybody's different, but in my case, uh, taking the time to read on my own, and especially right now to do this podcast and to talk to you and to discuss, it helps me shape my thoughts again,
Hmm.
which is something that we tend to forget when we work a lot because we're too tired at the end of the day to have our own thoughts.
Yeah.
I don't know. How do you process that?
Yeah, I think, I mean, we spend most of our careers giving voices to other people in other languages, but we don't have a forum to express things in our own voice. And I think this is a really great tool to be able to do that and to be able to invite people to do the same, like to have all these guests. And I think for 2025, we're going to focus a lot on that, on having more guest speakers in more from more different circles and interpretation and maybe other institutions, and not just maybe centered on North America, but maybe more internationally. And yeah, I have huge goals for the podcast, and I have huge professional goals and huge personal goals. So I think
Well,
2025,
that's how you move on in life, right? You That's where we
yeah,
move forward, rather.
yeah, and I think that this podcast does give me a lot of energy to push forward because yeah, every time we're done, I'm like, yes, let's. When are we doing the next one? Like we're, or like, how can we use what we learned to be able to apply that to our own professional lives or personal lives?
Absolutely, absolutely. So on that note, I would like to wish everyone a great end of 2024, an amazing 2025. Let's see what the future holds. Brian, always a pleasure.
Likewise, my friend.
And we'll see each other in January for season 2 of Found Interpretation Podcast.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. All right. Good night and good luck.
Good night.